when you are in a state of panic, stress, worry, fear, anxiety, anger, you make poorer decisions. When you make poorer decisions, you behave poorer. When you behave poorer, you get poorer results.
Welcome to the Mind Over Money podcast with Jess and James.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the Mind Over Money podcast. Now, this episode isn't just going to be around money. It's going to be around what impact money has on people's mental health. Now, in the spirit of ever increasing mental health awareness, I wanted to record this episode to really explain some of the things that go on in people's lives when it comes to money, how it impacts their mental well-being, and how it prevents them from actually moving on with their lives. And obviously, with my background as being an ex-psychiatric nurse, I think it's very fitting for me to record this episode. So we're going to talk about debt. Now, obviously, if you know me, you'll know I'm someone who's big on income generating activity, making money. That's the plan. You've got to go out there and create opportunities for ourselves. However, I'm also fully aware that when you're going through difficult times and maybe you've got debt, and that could be from retail debt, consumer debt, it could be from business debt, it doesn't matter. Whatever kind of debt it is, it plays on your mind. And I've been there, done that, got the t-shirt, and it absolutely sucks. So I wanted to talk about what you can do practically right now if you are in some form of debt. Now, let's talk about the two types of debt I just mentioned. First of all, we've got consumer debt. What does that mean? Your typical debt, you know, your credit card bills and your stuff and your things like that. Then you've got potential business debts, which are mortgages on investment properties, business loans, all that kind of stuff. So let's talk about the retail debt, the consumer debt, should we say, to start off with, which I think is something that most people will have experienced or may be experiencing right now in their lives. So what is it you can do when it comes to this kind of debt? Well, first and foremost, acceptance. Look, what is the point of not sleeping at night? What is the point in worrying yourself to death? What is the point in actually stressing yourself out over this debt when it's not going to go away? So the problem with most people is there's a lack of acceptance that goes on, which stops them from actually moving forwards. And that, my friends, that kind of space where you're living in limbo land almost, where you kind of know it's there, but you wish it wasn't there, and you're hoping it goes away, and you bury your head in the sand, and you hope it disappears. That is probably the worst thing that you can probably go through, especially when it comes to your mental health. So what could you be doing instead? What are some better options for you? What should you be doing? Well, like I said, acceptance. This is the first thing. Look, it's not going to go anywhere. It's not going to disappear. So having some form of acceptance over two things. Number one, the fact that you are in some form of debt right at the moment. So acceptance, okay? Secondly, is accepting that something you did has got you into this situation, whether you choose to believe it or not, where you can blame everyone else if you want to, but you know me, I'm always about being honest with you because I love you and I care about you and I want you to have the truth. So at some point in your life, you've done something that's created this consumer debt. So those two forms of acceptance will help you to now move on. Because at the end of the day, once you fully accept, you can start to look for solutions. Now, the good news is this. If you are in some form of debt right now, there are ways to get out of it clearly. However, you've got to be mindful of the first step, which is acceptance, but also willingness. Are you willing to make things right? Are you willing to put things to bed and make it all better again? Look, I'm sure you've all been in situations before where you've been in a sticky situation and it resolved itself, or you were given another chance and you had that sense of relief. You was like, oh my God, I'm so glad that's over. And I'm so glad there's a way out of this. I'm sure you've all been there before. So it's the same with debt. Once you've accepted it and you've got a willingness to change, you can now start talking to the people rather than burying your head in the sand, talking to the people who you owe money to. Now, clearly, there's lots of government agencies and advice lines for you to be able to get support with this. But the first thing you should do is not ignore the debt collectors. Don't ignore them, because that's the worst thing you could do. Let me flip the script for a second. What if right now somebody owed you money? What if, just imagine right now, maybe someone owes you money, or maybe maybe someone really does owe you money right now. How do you feel if they completely and utterly ignore you? Like you message them, they blank you, they don't reply. You call them, they cut the phone off. You write to them, they ignore you. How would you feel right now if somebody owed you money and they did all of these things to you? Now, my guess is you're not going to feel great, are you? And you're not going to be very happy. So how do you think that the debt collectors or the person you owe the debt to, these companies, the credit card companies, whoever it is, how do you think they feel when you completely and utterly ignore them? Well, clearly not good. Now, if you understand anything about human psychology and human behavior, when people are not pleased or not happy, they behave in erratic ways. So what do you think is going to happen? The person you owe the money to is going to be annoyed. They're going to now go, right, we need to get this money back. And they're going to come at it from a place of emotion. When I say emotion, not good emotion. They're going to want to get you. Then they're going to start contacting the legal teams and doing, and it just gets worse and worse and worse and worse. Well, look, what if I told you that the people you might owe money to on the other end of the line are human beings, and they have to listen to you, and they have to give you a shot, and they have to give you an opportunity to explain your situation. And more importantly, what they actually want is for you to talk to them about what you are planning to do to get out of this debt. So that in itself, you might be going, but Jason, isn't this episode supposed to be around mental health? Well, yes, it is. Because can you imagine facing head on, ringing someone up? Just picture this for a second. You owe someone money. You ring them up and you just level up with them and say, hey, listen, I'm really sorry. I've been in a bad place. I've got into debt and I've done what most people do, which is bury my head in the sand. And I want to apologize to you, Mr. or Mrs. Debt Collector or Mr. or Mrs. Company, for ignoring your correspondence, for ignoring your letters, for ignoring your phone calls, and for not speaking to you sooner. I'm really sorry. I would like to fix this. What do you think the person on the other end of the line is going to do? Do you really think they're going to tell you off and give you some kind of, jump on their moral high horse and give you a dressing down and tell you that you should know better? And they're not going to. No, they want their money. They actually are grateful you rang them. And now how are you feeling? Now you know that they don't hate you. They actually admire you for ringing them. They're actually grateful that you're even talking to them. And they've actually told you that, hey, we want to work with you. We want to help too. And then you start opening up a conversation with them about something that you can do that's realistic, whether that's to start some kind of payment plan or ask them to freeze all the interest while you get yourself together and come back to them in the next couple of weeks. But then you honor your agreement. Make sure you come back to them. How much better are you going to start feeling now that you're actually having a conversation with them? Even if you don't have the money to pay them back right now, how much better are you going to feel when it comes to just having a conversation with them and knowing that they're not going to chase you anymore because you're talking to them? Now, suddenly, again, let's link it back to your mental health. A letter comes through your door. You're not going to have a heart attack because you'll be like, hey, you know what? I've been talking to them. So let me just open this letter and see what it's all about. Or your phone rings. Your heart's not going to stop, or you're not going to panic, or you're not going to go, oh my God, who's calling me now? You're going to go, well, actually, let me just answer it. And if it's them, well, we've already been speaking. So how much better would you feel mentally? You'd feel a lot more freer. Now, for those of you who are quite pessimistic listening to this, well, look, you might be thinking, but Jess, that doesn't solve my problem. I still owe them money. That's not my point. My point is, how much better does your mental health feel because you're actually being honest with people rather than being chased down and feeling like you're hunted? My guess is you feel a lot more relieved. Now, here's the thing. Some of you who follow me and will know my work and would have heard me speak about these things before, is when you are in a state of panic, stress, worry, fear, anxiety, anger, you make poorer decisions. When you make poorer decisions, you behave poorer. When you behave poorer, you get poorer results. So if you want to get better results, you've got to work backwards. If you want better results, you've got to behave better. If you want to behave better, you've got to make better decisions. If you want to make better decisions, you must be in a better state when you make those decisions. So now, rather than be in a state of panic because you're scared of who's knocking at the door, what letter's coming through the door, who's ringing me up, you are now in a space of peace because you've spoken to the people you owe money to. Therefore, your state is better. Therefore, you'll make better decisions, more rational ones. Therefore, you'll behave in a better fashion, and therefore, you'll get better results. So what kind of decisions can you make? Well, when you're in a state of peace, you can go, right, I've decided to take responsibility for my situation and not run away from it. Therefore, what do I need to do? Behave in order to get better results. Right, let me start looking practically at what I can do to start paying down some of this debt. Can I actually speak to the company about freezing the interest like I said to you? Could you actually see if there's any way that you can get your debt consolidated by some of these consolidation companies? Could I actually go and speak to the bank and see if they can help me out? Can I speak to family? Can I speak to friends? Can I go and look at what other help is available out there to potentially even get some of this debt written off? Can I start asking questions rather than burying my head in the sand? And guess what? When you start behaving differently, guess what's going to happen? You're going to get better results. You might get some of your debt frozen. You might get some of your debt written off. All these solutions will start to appear, all because you're in a better state. So what I'm trying to say to you is, I know what it's like to feel like the bills are just mounting up. I know what it's like to feel like people are going to come knocking at the door any minute. I know what it's like to feel like who's ringing me and what's that letter coming through the door. And I know what it's like to feel chased almost and stressed and pressured. And it can lead you on to having some crazy, crazy thoughts about doing some really stupid things, which I'm not going to go into on this podcast. But I guess you know what I mean. It's not worth it. So I would say, step one, accept the situation for what it is. Accept that something that you have done has got you there as well, rather than blaming other people. And then step two, have a willingness, a desire to make things better. And then just start to talk. Start to talk to people. Start to talk to your friends. Start to talk to the people you owe money to. Just start somewhere. Nothing bad is going to happen to you. Just think about it like this, all right? People just want to work with you to get the debt repaid, or, like I said, there may be an option for you to have some of that written off. But unless you speak, nothing's going to change. So I'm going to leave you with this once again. If somebody owed you money right now, would you appreciate the fact that they were ignoring you, not returning your calls, not returning your messages, hiding from you? Would you appreciate that? Of course you wouldn't. You wouldn't like it at all. So look, don't do to others what you don't want done to yourself. You already know that old saying, right? So treat people in a way that you'd like to be treated. So start to speak to some of these people and then start to look at practical solutions to get yourself out of this situation. Because I promise you, whether you get a solution or not, the fact that you just start to accept and talk to people, everything will change with your state. Everything will change with your mood. You'll end up sleeping better at night. And look, I'm not saying you're not going to completely worry, because you're going to have some kind of worry. Your worry is not going to disappear completely, should I say. It's still going to be there, but it won't be as heavy. I promise you that. So look, if anything I've shared with you right now has moved you in any way or form, has resonated with you in any way or form, please do me a favor. Share this podcast episode with somebody who might need to hear it. Share it on your socials. Share it with friends, family, anyone who might just need to hear these practical steps. They might seem like common sense, but unfortunately, common sense isn't very common, especially when you're in a state of panic. But just share them with people. Share this episode with people. Leave us a review. Subscribe across all of your favorite platforms. And just be sure to do something practical about your situation, okay? Your mental health is more important than money. And I think, look, it's not the end of the world. Things always work out the way they're supposed to work out, and you're always going to land on your feet some way or the other. How do I know this? Because you've been in sticky situations before and you're still here, and you are going to find a way out of this one too. Okay, so I appreciate you, and thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Mind Over Money podcast.
You've been listening to the Mind Over Money podcast with Jess and James. Don't forget to subscribe and follow on all the channels, links in the show notes. Please also leave a review and visit www.jessandjames.com to find more resources on how to create the life you deserve.